Afternoon, everybody. My name is Anish Nalla. I'm class of 2016 Oxford and class of 2018 Emory. I'd like to welcome you guys to our great panel discussion today, thanks to our partnership with the Emory DC Politics and Policy Network, Career Center, and the Alumni Association. As a board member with the Emory DC Politics and Policy Network, I'm one of over 40 volunteers in the DC network, looking to provide programs and opportunities to better connect our DMV Emory community, support current students with experiential and career opportunities and conversations like this. So the Emory DC Politics and Policy Network is relatively new. We just recently launched this year, and we're focusing on providing stronger connections with our alumni on the Hill, other federal agencies, and in policy and advocacy work all around the DC area. As well as making connections with our local and state leaders, many of which who are joining us today. So before we begin, just want to cover a couple basics for our webinar today. Just a reminder to everybody that this session is being recorded and will be posted on the Emory Collective as well. So if you aren't able to make it today or want to look back at something, feel free to do so. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our moderator, Maya, who is president of our Emory DC network.
Hey, thanks so much, Anish. So, hey everyone, great to meet you virtually this evening. My name is Maya and I'm class of 2016 and also proud to serve as president of our Emory DC network. We have 13 active networks and a board of over 40 volunteers that connect our alumni together. This is how we maintain our Emory traditions as well, now that we're alums, and really just excited to build the Emory community in DC. So events like this are particularly exciting too, to showcase the partnership between our different networks. And also devoting time to students and really fostering that pipeline between our undergraduates and our alums. So really excited today to introduce our panel. First, I'd like to reintroduce Anish. He's class of 18, joins us from Senator Elizabeth Warren's office. So thank you again for joining us today. Next, we have Philip Cesani. He's class of 08, joining us from U.S. House of Representatives Appropriations Committee. Hey, thanks so much for joining us. Next, I would like to introduce Krister Holliday, class of 90, and joins us as Chief of Staff for Rep. Kay Granger of Texas 12th District. Hey, thanks so much for your time tonight. And finally, Amanda K. Edwards, class of 04, former Houston City Council member at large and president and CEO of Community-Based Solutions firm. Thanks for joining us. And we have one other panelist that will hopefully be joining us in a little bit. She's tied up with some work events here in Atlanta, is Mary Margaret. So hopefully we'll welcome her on later, but she's off doing some important work stuff. So with that, thank you all for joining us, and we'll jump in with some questions for the group. So these are some questions that were previously submitted, and to kick us off, we'll have each of you answer. So we can just go in the order of introductions here. And let's start with, what led you to a career in legislative politics? And did you know that this is what you wanted to do? And how did that evolve and change over time?
Yeah, so I think for myself speaking, when I started at Oxford, I had no idea that I wanted to be in legislative politics. I very much came in on the pre-med track and was kind of oriented towards sciences. The great thing about Oxford was, it's a liberal arts education, so I got to take classes in all different kinds of disciplines. And one of those classes was a poli-sci class that I really fell in love with. And knew I wanted to explore it a little more. So graduated from Oxford, declared a poli-sci major, and I got my first taste, I guess, of DC through the poli-sci department and their Washington semester program, which really just opened up a whole new world for me, and really opened me up to a ton of DC opportunities. And yeah, I'm forever thankful for that program.
That's great. Who was your favorite professor, or one of them?
Oh, I don't like to play favorites. Let's see.
Just a great one that got you on this track that you had in the poli-sci department.
Yeah, so Dr. Ryder was who helped in the IR department, was my advisor. Really, it was a kind of a guiding light for me throughout my career at Emory. So definitely have to, if I was going to play favorites, pick him.
Great, thanks. All right, Philip, over to you.
Sure, thank you, and thanks for having me today. My kind of career trajectory into policy and politics is sort of indirect. So my hope for anyone watching who's still in college is that you take away that you do not have to do every single thing, a certain way right now to lead to a role like this, working in legislative politics. So I work for House Democrats in the US House of Representatives on the Committee on Appropriations, which is responsible for federal funding, both the funding we do every year, on a yearly basis, and then funding that we have to do on an emergency basis. So for example, if there's a coronavirus pandemic or a hurricane disaster, we provide funding to programs to address these things. And so in college, I studied international studies, was interested in development issues. I joined Teach for America in 2008 in New Orleans. I was really inspired by what was going on in New Orleans in the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina. I worked as a school teacher for 4 years. So again, not really doing a sort of direct, route to policy, but after 4 years of working in that community, I really started to think about why I wanted to, or how I wanted to continue to make an impact. So I got my master's degree in public policy after, and eventually made it down to DC. I first, in graduate school, I studied a lot of budget and finance coursework. That was really interesting for me. And I started first at the Office of Management and Budget, which is kind of the White House's budget office, and specifically focused on higher education programs like student loans and Pell Grants, which many of you have. And 2 years ago was offered my current role, and I work on education and labor issues now. So hopefully you can sort of see that there's really doesn't have to be a perfect direct line to this work, but you can sort of pursue the things that interest you, and be mindful of opportunities you have moving forward.
Thanks for that. Krista, I'll kick it over to you. And I see your very nice DC picture in the background too. So we can feel like we're all in DC together.
That's right. Well, thanks for doing this thing. And this is a great opportunity, and I appreciate everybody being involved. We've worked for a long time in the alumni community to get more people involved in DC and the legislative and through internships. And I think we're really making good progress. So this is really helpful. I moved to DC because I had 2 Emory friends who were in law school at GW and invited me to move to DC. And I knew I was like the others, was an international studies major. I wanted to do something related to foreign affairs or international relations. DC was sort of the place to go. pounded the pavement and ended up getting a job on Capitol Hill because the office needed somebody from Georgia. And so I worked for 7 years for Mr. Gingrich, also an Emory alum, but in his personal office representing Georgia, and then worked for Senator Chambliss, both on the House and Senate side. So, knowing you want to do something in government, I think, and having that public service was a big driver for me. But working in the legislative branch is dynamic, and it's less bureaucratic than being in the administration or the executive branch, and it's never dull. And it's been fun's not always the right word, but it's always there's always something going on. It's always new, and the issues change all the time, and the opportunity to have direct impact and really make a difference in legislation, policy, or funding. Kind of like Philip, my boss is on the appropriations committee, and I've just returned to Capitol Hill for sort of another round. But what those folks do on a daily basis to ensure that the country continues to function, operate, and the funding goes to the right places and the right priorities. Those are fundamental decisions that have a lot of implication broadly, and so being part of that is it's thrilling, and it can be a lot of fun. It's a lot of work and a lot of smart people involved, but it's a dynamic environment.
Sure is. All right, Amanda, I'll kick it over to you next.
Well, I think one of the things that really got me interested in public service, I was an at-large Houston City Council member serving about 2.3 million Texans for the last 4 years. I ran for United States Senate, and this election cycle did not make it out of the primary, but certainly have been guided by the notion that people have to come first. And I think what we've seen is a very ugly underbelly of politics manifesting itself for quite some time, and very polarized politics that have lost sight of people. When I was growing up, my dad was diagnosed with cancer. And so with my perspective of having learned what the US healthcare system was directly from a parent who was undergoing cancer treatment, and understanding that, geez, this is not just a matter of who's in charge and who has power. This is a matter of being good stewards of these positions so you can make policy that can save lives and provide people with opportunity. And that was a guiding post for me very early on in wanting to be very serious about policy making, in addition to service. And so ultimately, after I graduated from Emory, went to Harvard and moved to New Orleans, I clerked. I came back to Houston, my hometown, and decided that I would run for office after having practiced as a municipal finance lawyer for quite some time. And in doing so, really kind of focused more on people, less on just the political maneuvering. And I think that was a breath of fresh air for a lot of people. And so I'm hopeful that we will continue to encourage more people who are interested in actually doing the job, not just running for office. That's kind of like the wedding, but you've got a whole marriage after that. So we've got to focus on people who can get things done while elected, and then of course making sure we amplify voices of people.
Thank you for that. That's a great sentiment. And I like the wedding analogy, the marriage that comes after. All right, so going on to our next question. We have a lot of people looking to, one day see themselves in your roles, but if you could talk about what the typical path of advancement has looked like in a legislative role, what you've seen, or what that's looked like for you personally, that would be great. So I'll start it back at the top and we can work our way back.
Yeah, so I think Philip touched on it a little earlier, but I think there's a million and one ways to end up on a career in legislative politics. I think for myself, I got mine through a internship and just consistent like networking. As I got up here to DC, if I remember correctly, I actually just emailed a ton of Democratic reps for the Georgia delegation looking for an internship right after I graduated from Emory. And was fortunate enough to intern for Congressman David Scott for Georgia's 13th district. And, I think from that, you kind of work your way up. I know from interns, the typical route, if there is one, you jump up to a staff assistant in that role for a little bit. And then depending on your interests, I know you can pursue the legislative route, which would then be, a legislative correspondent, legislative assistant role. If you're interested in the comms department, you can move up to like a press assistant or a press secretary role. At least for like personal offices, I think it's relatively linear. You kind of move at the pace of the office and what they see fit. But I will say that, I've definitely seen a lot of people who've made the transition from a legislative role into a press role or vice versa. So if anything, typical might not be the right word for me, but I think, there's definitely a lot to be learned for the different routes that you can take to get there.
I think that's a good a good example of how I feel like I've seen a lot of people get experience that sets them up for positions on Capitol Hill. And as I mentioned earlier, that wasn't my path to my role in Capitol Hill. Though I think it might be, I might be in the minority. I think it is very helpful if, say, you're either in college right now or you're just about to get out of college, if you're interested in working on Capitol Hill, or at least just seeing what it's like, trying to get an internship. One great thing is that now it's amazing. It wasn't this way for so long, but interns are paid on Capitol Hill now. So while that may still be a hardship for many people, it is certainly more achievable than it has been in the past. And Emory, I know, has lots of great programs that perhaps help people out that want to do something like that over their summer or in some other capacity. But maybe what I will just say a little bit about is, I think when you're a little bit further along in your career, where you've, say, been working professionally for a while, the way you learn about opportunities and kind of put yourself in contention for things is sort of built on the work you're known for already. So a lot of these roles in Capitol Hill that are very specialized, like mine, where I work on budget and finance issues, I was able to get because people were familiar with the work that I had done already in the executive branch, and I was detailed onto the Hill for 6 months while I was working in the executive branch to a committee. So that's a rare opportunity. A lot of federal employees don't get to do that, but that opened me up to meeting lots of people that worked on other kinds of committees. And when this role opened up with appropriations, the House flipped control from Republican to Democrat, and there were a lot of positions they had to hire. So I was fortunate enough to be considered among, for those roles. So I want to just give you a little insight into how you can create opportunities yourself by doing things like interning and other sorts of volunteer opportunities. Working on a campaign is a great way to get connected. I didn't do any of those things and got here kind of by dumb luck, but I think at the end of the day, if I weren't in this role, I would be doing something else I'd be happy with, because I think focusing on what your strengths are and what animates you and your passion for service is really what will drive you to work that matches your interests over time.
Yeah, I think Philip's exactly right. There's no traditional or set way to get onto the Hill or in the legislative branch. Everybody comes at it from different ways. Interning and volunteering on a campaign, working in an office, just being around the political environment gives you a sense, and it's sort of a test to see, one, if you like it, and if you don't like it, then you learn something, and if you do like it and you kind of get bit by the political bug, then you've got a taste of it and kind of move on there. But I know a lot of people who have come in, as an intern and then a staff assistant and moved up, just like Anish had described. Others, come in kind of midway, or as a press person, as a legislative expert, as a district director, or a caseworker, somebody working in a district. All those positions in a congressional office offer an opportunity to put your public service passion to work and help people, which is what it's all about. But there are so many variables and ways to get in. It is a dynamic environment. I'll highlight the two things that Philip said, were one, it builds on each other. So your experience and what you've done really does matter as you move up, and that reputation and your work helps you create those opportunities to get to the next position. And then the other thing, and everybody touched on it as well, is just having that network, and the more people who know that you're looking for a job or wanting to move around and can be helpful with the Emory Alumni Network or whatever other networks you've got, put you in a position to learn about openings or positions or opportunities that can help you later on.
I would say one of the things that's important is making sure that you establish relationships. That's essential in making sure you're getting opportunities going forward. So it's networks upon networks upon networks. And so I started off when I was a college student interning in the Georgia state legislature. I still keep in touch with the Georgia senator that I interned for eons ago, many eons ago. But I still keep in touch with them, and also worked on the Hill in the summer. You can't also be preoccupied about how much some of these jobs pay or don't pay, because it's about getting the requisite experience. And so establishing a network in Washington and having the state legislative experience was really valuable for me to be able to, open myself up for more opportunity. And then certainly in my professional life, I practiced law for many years before I ran for office. And for those who are thinking about should they themselves be in public office, I would highly recommend that you think about what skill sets do you bring to the table that A, lend themselves to credibility, B, that you can actually utilize in a real professional capacity. Just having passed through someplace doesn't make you someone who is, has an in-depth experience or knowledge about something. And so, I know there's oftentimes people saying, should I run now or should I wait until I've worked a little while? And as someone who worked a while before she ran, I will say it certainly not only aided in credibility, but also it it created a dynamic in which I really was the most qualified person for the job I was seeking. And that's what you ultimately want to be. It's not necessarily just checking boxes. It's also about equipping yourselves with the experiences that really make you great at what you're seeking to do. And so if you're seeking to serve, having, you know, the variety of experiences. I was very involved in nonprofit, doing grassroots community-based work, community revitalization work with the community. I was doing that in my off time, I guess, if I had off time, but I was doing that. And then of course, practicing in a big firm doing municipal finance. So I had such a varied background that it was very appealing for the role that I ended up seeking.
That's great. Thank you guys for sharing that with the group. And some of you have touched on this in your answers to the last question, and what skills have made you successful and helped you advance in your role. Taking that a step further, what are some experiential opportunities that someone should look for to best prepare for entering this field? And Amanda, I'll start with you, and we'll go in reverse order for this one.
Yeah, I think I answered a lot of it. Is whatever you're seeking to do, you get the skills that are necessary for you to be able to do it well. We don't need more people who are just passionate in politics. We've got a lot of just passionate people. We need people who are passionate, who are committed, who are strong, who are leaders, and who can be effective at getting the job done. And a lot of the times, you know, when you're talking about policy that actually works, the easy stuff has been done a long time ago. It's the hard, more complicated stuff that's left in having someone who can really understand the devil that lies in the details, I think is important. I think oftentimes, I mean, look at the PPP loans, right? And how when that first came out, there were so many things that weren't anticipated. But if you had experience in working with or dealing with issues like accessing capital, or dealing with some of the small mom and pop shops that really needed to access the money, I could have told you there was going to be an asymmetry in who is going to be able to access those loans, because I've been working in communities dealing with the disparities faced by women and minority business owners relating to accessing capital for small businesses. Those are things that, if you can have the ability to see them before they are unintended consequences of an oversight, that would bode very, very well in terms of your ability to effectively serve. And certainly you have talented staff around you when you're an elected official, but I'm a big proponent of believing that you yourself need to know what you're talking about and not just read off of talking points. Anybody can shove talking points in your face. The question is it right? And do I have an ability to create a vision that we should be striving for? And so if you're just kind of good at the politics and not very good at understanding policy and understanding how to affect change in communities, if that's what you're seeking to serve, then I think you're not really prepared for the role that you're seeking. And so seek those opportunities out and understand what the difference is between imposing on communities and neighborhoods, and what does it mean to have community buy-in and engagement and ownership of solutions that will have a long-term impact on their communities if you do it right.
Yeah, I think Amanda hit it pretty well. You know, you have to be able to combine, at least in this world, you have to be able to combine both the political and the policy, and be able to find the right balance to be able to get things done. And you know, I think the reason we do this and the reason we have the passion to do it is try to get things done to help people. You know, I would add the experiences and the skills that as a chief of staff looking to, you know, when I'm trying to hire somebody, it's, you know, will they word, can they write well, and you know, they don't have to be an extrovert, they interact with people good, and in a way that is positive and friendly even under difficult and stressful circumstances. And you know, being able to deal with difficult people consistently and in a friendly, open manner and in a sort of customer service way is difficult, but it's clearly serves you well. But I would also, for anybody, particularly folks who are in school, if you can communicate well, write concisely, distill information into very concise and accurate bullet points to convey what you get across, it's extremely important. And as much information as that comes at you, being able to be persuasive and relay information quickly, accurately, and concisely is a critical skill that I think is it's hard to master, but it makes all the difference in being able to work well in this kind of environment.
It's kind of nice going after two really excellent answers because I don't have too much more to add. I mean, I think, that those components of you have to have that passion for service and know the problems and issues you want to solve. You want to have a sense of the lives you want to make better by the work that you're doing in legislative politics or policy. You have to have a good sense of how to navigate politics, and you have to be excellent at sort of advancing and implementing policy. So those are that's the secret sauce, and the experiences that help you do those three things are worthwhile experiences. And I'll just build off something Krister mentioned about sort of that kind of interpersonal category. Probably some of the best things you can do, whether it's in school or if you're a professional, is kind of those group assignments, group work. If you're annoyed by a group project or paper, guess what working's like? I have a crystal ball to show you where you are in track changes with 10 other people. That's how we make laws. That's how we write memos to brief politicians about laws. On the council, I'm sure Amanda could speak to that. Like, that is the nature of the legislating she's doing, is, as a group coming together to solve a problem. So I would just say, don't de-emphasize that part of your development, learning to work collaboratively with others. And, certainly just anything you can do to further clarify the things that you're passionate about, as well as the skills you can sharpen to help you think on your feet. At the end of the day, the people that I respect the most in this field, they're just so quick on their feet, and they are adaptable and nimble, and it's present in their writing, it's present in their communication styles, it's present in the deliberate actions and organization they bring to their work. So, experiences that give you that foundation are going to serve you well.
Yeah, I think everybody's pretty much hit it on the head. I don't know if there's much for me to really add, but I think for me at least, what I thought was maybe a little muddled during my time at Emory was, just your connections with people. And I know Amanda, Krister, and Philip, touched on it, but I think who you meet and who you talk to, especially in a city like DC, I feel like people are the greatest currency, so to speak, you can have. Within the Emory community, everybody's always been more than helpful to have a conversation about, what they're doing, what their work might look like. And, as a junior staffer now, being able to, interact with, people who are in more senior positions or people who are in different agencies, being able to have those conversations and those connections to say, I see what you're at, I want to get to that kind of level. What do you think? Like, what have you found to be more helpful? And just be willing to shoot them an email saying, hey, let's grab I guess nowadays it's a virtual coffee. But but, just be willing to have those conversations and being able to, put yourself out there, I think is so, so important. And I think, as far as like for students who are in school, right, I think it can be a little intimidating, right, to reach out to an alum, or, like if I wanted to reach out to Krister, reaching out to a chief of staff can be kind of intimidating, but I think, once you find that comfort and you find that, people are more than willing to help, I think that's a huge step as far as your development goes.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. It can be tough to reach out sometimes, but like you, I've always found a lot of success in reaching out to fellow Emory alums, and are constantly really grateful of how responsive they are and willing to hop on the phone and chat, or at one point grab a coffee. So definitely encourage everyone to do that too. So next question would be, what is your greatest accomplishment and your greatest challenge in this work? And Anish, I'll start with you on this one.
That's a tough question. I feel like this year has been so crazy. It's hard to pick. I'll say for me personally, I've been with the senator's office for about a year now. And I came into the office at a time when the senator was right in the middle of a presidential campaign. And, not too shortly after I started, we jumped into an impeachment trial. And I think for me, as far as an accomplishment, just learning how to be a staffer on the Senate side, amidst all the chaos that was going on. Not many junior staffers get, thrown in the fire immediately. So being able to like work my way out of that and work my way to integrate into the office, I think was definitely tough, but I think I'm all the better for it. And greatest challenge, again, there were so many. Krister kind of mentioned it earlier, but I think it's worthwhile mentioning, the Hill is a great place to be, but fun isn't always the right word at all times. It definitely comes with its challenges. I would say, for anyone who's interested in being a junior staffer jumping onto the Hill, that being able to be kind of resilient. A favorite word of the senator is to persist. So we like to not only help one another out, but make sure you have that kind of stamina to know that things are going to get tough, and being able to work your way out of those situations, and not lose sight of who we're helping and what we're doing. So.
So I think, yeah, I think this year the challenges come easier than the accomplishments when we think about them. I think in terms of challenges, I'll start with, I think one of the things that's just most challenging about probably any job, but in the context of working in legislative politics or policy, is that those kind of interpersonal dynamics that are, you're not in control of it. So say you have a supervisor, and I'll just put it this way, in my old job, there were times where I'd have a supervisor who just wasn't persuaded by something that was just so clear in my mind. And without being specific, about the example, that can be frustrating sometimes, like, oh, it's just so clear to me why this should be the way it is. But for whatever reason, I was either not persuasive in the moment, or there were other dynamics that my supervisor had to take into consideration that, forced her to make a different decision. So, that's challenging, feeling like you can't fully control the outcome of something you put a lot of time and thought and passion into. And unfortunately, that will happen a lot in this field. But what makes it worth it are those things where you're like, wow, that was a battle, but that really made a difference. And one example is this past year in our annual appropriations bill, for the Department of Education, our subcommittee chair woman, she was able, I was able to help her secure a roughly $200 million set aside of funding in the Department of Education for social and emotional learning grants. And this is something that hasn't been funded at the federal level before. And the idea is that school districts and states around the country that want to implement evidence-based strategies and practices that help teachers and schools, be intentional about the social and emotional development of their students, have those resources to do that. And this is something that was the result of early conversations with my subcommittee chairwoman, hearing that she really wanted to do something in this space, talking to researchers and experts on this topic who had put out studies and empirical evidence about the value of doing this in schools, and then hashing it out with my colleagues across the aisle, and even within our own party, to say this is a priority. There are only X number of resources, but we really need to be doing this year, and ultimately being able to get that done. And that's just one. We all have examples of things like this, but that's why this work is so impactful. And having been a teacher, it was particularly meaningful to me to think this would be the kind of thing the students I worked with and taught, and the families that I worked with would have really benefited from and enjoyed. So hopefully that's helpful to give you some insight into the good you can do in these roles.
Yeah, I think the most biggest accomplishment, as I think back on it, is really finding ways to help people, and whether it's getting someone's casework, where they a veteran's disability check or a social security check for somebody who can't get through the bureaucracy well enough, or being able to, as Philip said, changing the law is hard. The reason the law is there is it was crafted under some circumstance. Changing it is difficult, and building the coalitions and finding the strategies and who needs to talk to who, and the ways to get that done and unravel it, and is like untying a knot. And when you finally get there and you get your program either funded, or you get your provision into a bill that finally makes it through a conference and signed into law, it's a great feeling to be able to say that you had an impact on changing something that's going to impact somebody's life. And I think that's part of my biggest accomplishment, I think, as I look back, is being able to do that. And as Philip said, and the biggest, there's a lot of challenges. There are so many challenges with being able to do that and work at having long-term patience and being present, like Anish said. Just it takes a lot in order to do that, and those are challenges. The other challenge I would say is just dealing with the amount of information. There's a constant flow of information from all kinds, and being able to work through that and get your arms around how you manage that flow of information and figuring out what's important and what's not, is I think is a challenge that I constantly have to work on. So it's but again, all that feeds into being able to accomplish those things that are important for making the country a better place.
I think for me, one of my biggest accomplishments was looking at an opportunity that we had to really cultivate our innovation economy. So part of leadership is not just, resolving problems. Part of leadership is also having vision and an ability to execute on vision. And so sometimes it's not about fixing a problem as so much as it is seizing an opportunity. And so what I knew was that we had a huge opportunity in our hands to really embark upon an intriguing time in our city in which we could bring together the corporations, academia, government, investors, startups, and really create or cultivate an innovation economy that was going to help support them remaining and being in that space as opposed to going elsewhere, going to Silicon Valley or to another market. And that was something that I was really excited to do. Right now under construction as we speak is an innovation district. And all of that stems from the work we started in terms of really exploring what we could do to really stimulate or cultivate an innovation economy in our city. So that was exciting and that was fun. Some stuff is not as fun, especially when you see the shortcomings of government. And so when we had, 51 inches of rainfall come across my community through what was called Hurricane Harvey at that time, it was pretty detrimental for a lot of people. And the truth of the matter is, we have not been able to adequately address a lot of people's needs. Disaster recovery in our country is broken. It's not intended to actually work for the people that it's eventually supposed to reach. It's intended to safeguard and protect government money, but it's not necessarily designed to allow you to have the resources when you actually need the resources, and so it was a very frustrating journey, and one in which I mobilized hundreds of volunteers going door to door, checking on our low income seniors, especially because those are the folks that get left behind in these, gugobs and gugobs of sign your life away here paperwork. People get intimidated and they don't sign up and they live in houses that have mold in them. And so seeing that in my hometown was pretty devastating, especially after I had moved to New Orleans to help out after Katrina and then going home and that's what happened. And of course, seeing how there are still very much a substantial amount of shortcomings. That has been that part of my work, although it can be rewarding on an individual basis, meaning like if you help a family, the system itself is broken. So it is very, very challenging to work within a system that doesn't work until that system can get overhauled.
Great. Well, thank you guys for those answers. And I know I've thrown a lot of questions at you tonight, and appreciate the insight you've provided. This question's up for grabs for any of you. Is there anything else, other words of wisdom that you'd like to share with the group tonight?
I'll just say that the legislative, it doesn't matter where you are, whether it's federal level or local, state level, the legislative dynamics and trying to get more people involved. It's a small town, and we all work together a lot. We know each other well. A lot of people have worked together for a long time, but it's just something to kind of keep in mind. And as I tell folks, always be kind, always try to be helpful, because that it comes back either to haunt you or to help you later on. But the work we do is really based on relationships and how we work together and or how we don't work together. So the more we can work together, the better we are. But I think it's always important to remember that what we do is based on relationships, and it's a very small town, a lot of people working together to make it work.
Yeah, I'll just jump in and say for, any junior staffers, anyone who's looking to jump on the Hill and, if this is a career that you think you want to pursue, I think the most important thing is don't get discouraged by something that doesn't go your way. Really just kind of put your head down and work, and people will notice that moving forward. And I think this year's obviously been incredibly difficult for a lot of people, and I think as long as you decide this is a career you want to do and you keep people at the center of what you're going to be doing, I think you're already ready for anything that this job can throw at you.
I really like what Anish just said, and I would just add that, please don't be, whether you're a student or whether you're an alum, please get involved, please engage, whether that's, seeking professional opportunities, volunteering, working on a campaign. This work is worth it. It's important. It touches people's lives. It makes an impact. If you were wondering if it's worth it, yes, 100% it is. Please consider doing this kind of work. And I would just say, be open to being surprised by what interests you, what things you're good at. This may not be something that stays the same over time. As the years go on, you may learn you're getting better at something that you didn't used to think you were so good at, or you were interested in something that you didn't used to be so interested in. So I would also just say be compassionate with yourself, and don't get discouraged, as Anish said, but also be open to learning and growing. And I think whether that's in the near term or in the long term, this work will be there for you to make an impact and do. And being mindful of the stuff you're doing within yourself is something I would encourage you to do as well.
I would just close by also just kind of the way that I opened, which is to keep the people that you seek to serve front and center. And if you are someone who is really seeking public office, make sure you're doing it with the people at the center of your why. Oftentimes, that's the first question you get asked when you become a political candidate is, well, why? Why are you running? Or why should I support you? And the question that you can answer about your why, your motivation, that's what brings about transformational leadership and change, is when people can see themselves in your response. If they can believe and appreciate that not only are you whatever you are in terms of a leader, but it's not really about you. It's really about them and how their lives will be different and how their community can grow and improve and change as a result of you getting elected. And so I think understanding your why, and that's not something that is immediate or easy and that you always have, but always being in pursuit of what's your personal purpose and mission and why it is that you're seeking to do the things that you're doing. And if people are not at the center, then perhaps maybe public service may not be exactly what you should be aspiring toward, but certainly there are many related things. I think it's too much work, it's too hard, it's difficult work, and there's too many people that are counting on you for it not to be about them. And I think that, a lot of times people want their name on a placard, or they like being called first at events, or they like the swivel chairs or the perks, and all of those things are fine and dandy. Okay. Nothing is wrong there, but that can't be your why. Your why has to be deeper, and it's going to keep you motivated. It's going to keep you working late at night. It's going to keep you energized. It's going to provide you fuel. I often tell people, they ask about awards and recognitions and things like that. But to me, always the best and greatest reward to me is the reward of actually empowering a community or empowering people in that journey. And so really kind of keep that front and center in terms of perspective of your work. And I think the motivation, the drive, and commitment that you'll have to exude in order to get where you're trying to go will follow accordingly.
That's great. Well, thank you for the closing sentiment, and to all of you. We're reaching the top of the hour here, so we'll go ahead and close up. But thank you all for your time tonight. It is very much appreciated and was just a great panel and great discussion. On behalf of Rep. Oliver, she regrettably was not able to join due to some emerging issues at the Capitol, but she sends her best too. So once again, thank you all on the panel. And just to wrap us up with a few closing remarks on behalf of the DC Alumni Network and all the programming that went into this. Really appreciate your time. We have almost 6,000 alumni in the greater DC area. And we're doing our best to bring everyone together. So if there's other things that you would like to see, please feel free to reach out. Also check your emails and at the emorycollective.com. This is where you'll see future event postings such as this. We hope to bring you some more great events like this as well. And feel free to reach out with any questions as well if you would like to be involved or take on some volunteer opportunities too. Would love to chat. We have a lot of programming like this geared towards both alumni to help you in your career progression and students. Also a number of things that you can utilize like Handshake and Career Center. So would love to keep talking to you guys about that. So thank you again. And I'll go ahead and close this out tonight. So thanks everyone for your time.